So our topic today is a little bit provocative, where IP gateways fail. The idea being that IP gateways are a very popular method for achieving voice over IP, and we want to take a look at that. And we would like to propose perhaps a different way to transition to voice over IP. We have an idea or two for you, so let's begin. Our agenda looks like this. First, we'll talk about moving to voice over IP. What are the drivers in the industry and what are the obstacles for implementation? We'll look in general at the IP gateway approach. How does one go about actually making the network available for the IP gateway and what's involved? Then we'll take a look at what we call the transitional approach, which is offered as an alternative to the IP gateway approach. We'll give you a few facts about Asterisk, which is rather critical to the end solution that we would like to propose. Why exactly is Xorcom providing this presentation? Where do our products come into play? And then we'll give you a bit of a summary of everything that we've talked about. So let's look at the drivers for moving to voice over IP. First and foremost, lowering communication costs. And this was true even before the global economy took such a downturn. We're always looking for ways to make communication more efficient, and one very, very prime factor is lowering the communication costs. Of course, there's also a benefit of being able to support remote extensions. And with many businesses today that have remote or branch locations, it's great to have the opportunity to network between the various personnel. SIP phones are becoming more and more popular, so you do need an IP solution in order to be able to add the SIP phone capabilities. And all of the soft phones, again, for people that are located outside of the corporate office, maybe working from home or on the road, having the opportunity to use a soft phone also is very attractive. All of this leads to improved availability of the workforce. Like I said, if you have personnel that are on the road, technical support, salespeople, people working from home, this is a great driver for implementing voice over IP. Let's take a look at some of the obstacles. Well, from the finance department, not too eager to make any kind of change. The famous saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You have your current telephony system and it seems to be working fine, so let's go with the status quo. There's also the element of costs of equipment. They see it as lost assets. Moving to voice over IP is perceived as something where you take a perfectly a functioning piece of equipment such as a legacy PBX or your analog phones, and you just toss them in the trash. On the operations side of things, there's a fear factor. IP is a relatively unknown technology when you're talking to operations people, perhaps, and so they understand that there's going to be, some kind of a learning curve for themselves, and that any kind of changes will mean that there is some kind of hassle. The infrastructure will have to be modified. That translates into system downtime. So from an operations department point of view, it's not such a great idea. As far as middle management is concerned, they think about the productivity of their employees, and they think, oh, it's a new system. We'll have to retrain our employees. And so while they're being retrained, then what does their efficiency look like? They're not doing their regular work. And of course, the employees themselves may have some kind of a resistance to learning new methods if that's what's being introduced in the voice over IP system. The IP gateway approach is to purchase a standalone IP gateway to get IP connectivity. And this is typically a two-legged approach, meaning that the IP gateway will connect on the one hand to the PBX, on the other side to the Internet. Now, of course, the benefits of this approach is that it can work perfectly well alongside an existing legacy PBX. And as we know, the IP gateway approach has been around for, I would say, almost a decade, so it's a low-cost and well-known solution. And in order to implement it after you've already decided which manufacturer to purchase from, you do need to configure and to connect the gateway. And this involves IP settings, setting up the PBX. If you're going to be connecting it to the PSTN, you do need to set up that. So there's somewhat of a configuration and connection issue involved on the gateway side. Let's take a look at what a system diagram would look like with the IP gateway approach. What you see on your screen now is a perfectly typical situation where you have headquarters with a legacy PBX, which is attached via PRI trunk to the PSTN, and you have an assortment of analog phones connected to that legacy PBX. You have a remote location, and that remote location also has its own legacy PBX connected via PRI to the PSTN and its analog phones. So with the introduction of an IP gateway at headquarters and another IP gateway at the remote office, both connected via PRI to their respective legacy PBX units, you get the benefit of having the Internet connection WAN in your system, which allows you to connect remote workers and reduce costs by commissioning with a VoIP provider. On the other side, if we were to look at the disadvantages, this approach of an IP gateway solves a single issue, which is IP connectivity. And I say that that's a temporary solution because the IP gateway is a closed system, and so it's not upgradable. It's not flexible. What happens when you're ready to move to an IP-PBX? Well, it becomes redundant because everything that the IP gateway does, the IP-PBX can do as well. Because you're installing different products in the headquarters and remote offices, this could lead to compatibility issues. Since an IP gateway is limited in functionality with the two-legged approach, it can never replace the PBX totally. So you will always have to spend those maintenance fees to keep the legacy PBX going, and the utilities costs that are associated with it, such as the special air conditioning and power and actual real estate that it takes up in your building. Worst of all, we see it as a dead-end solution. Just because there's no way to move forward, there's being a closed and limited solution, it just cannot grow with your company. On the other hand, let's take a look at a transitional approach. With the transitional approach, you get all of the benefits that we discussed as being part of the IP gateway solution, plus you also get the benefit of all IP-PBX features, and these include the IVR system, voicemail to email, conference bridging, IP trunks, additional extensions, fax to mail, all kinds of special features that are available because you are combining software applications with telephony. And that's the basic definition of the IP-PBX, spanning those two worlds. And best of all, it's future-proof, meaning the transitional approach is open-ended. It can constantly change to meet the needs of your organization. Let's take a closer view at what the transitional approach involves. We see it in 3 phases. In the first phase, you can add IP phones and a remote IP-PBX, and we call it a 3-legged phase because at once you are connected to the PBX, the PSTN, and IP, whether it be LAN, WAN, or both. The second phase is the ability to add more ports and trunks to the existing system. And the last phase, when we're feeling very brave and confident in the system, is when we totally disconnect the legacy PBX and rely only on the IP-PBX. Let's take an even closer look, starting with phase 1. What we're going to do is we're going to add the IP-PBX into the existing infrastructure. It integrates via PRI and works alongside the existing legacy PBX. It operates basically as a smart gateway. So at this stage, we're pretty much in parallel to the functionality of the IP gateway approach. It does provide the connection to remote offices, teleworkers, telephony providers, and in addition, so this is a benefit beyond the IP gateway approach, is you get all of those IP-PBX features that I mentioned. What does that look like in the network? You see that we're starting out with the same basic diagram of our headquarters and our remote office. But in this solution, the transitional approach, we add an IP-PBX between the PSTN and the existing legacy PBX. And we do the same at the remote office. What does that do for us? Well, first of all, it gives us the opportunity to hook up IP phones via the LAN. Second of all, we do have the WAN IP access to make the communication between our branch offices more efficient and cost-effective. We are able to connect remote workers and commission a VoIP provider in order to bring down costs even more. So again, looking at the transitional approach, it basically mirrors the IP gateway approach, but it does have the added benefit of being able to add the IP phones. What's involved in phase 2 of the transitional approach? Well, at this stage, we can add more telephony ports and trunks as necessary. Analog ports such as FXS for analog telephone sets. Analog trunks for additional PSTN lines, those would be FXO. And then PRI or BRI ports for additional digital lines. What does that look like on our system? We're building on the phase 1, and what we do here is add to the IP-PBX additional modules that will provide additional telephony ports and trunks. For example, from the FXS ports module that we included here, we can add additional analog phones. We can activate additional PRI ports in the IP-PBX to get additional trunks to the PSTN. These trunks can be BRI or FXO as well. And phase 3 of the transitional approach is for when everyone is feeling supremely confident that the system is complete, that all of the connections are working to everyone's satisfaction. Nobody is traumatized by any changes in their dialing habits, and that management can see that there has been cost reduction in the inter-branch calling as well as the calls through the VoIP service provider. That's the stage where we can eliminate completely the legacy PBX. And that will truly maximize the cost savings, because at that stage then you are no longer required to pay the maintenance fees to keep that legacy PBX running, and you do have the benefit of reduced utilities because you no longer need the special air conditioning, electricity, or space in your business for that legacy PBX. And what does that look like here? Watch carefully. We just completely get rid of that PBX and everything is still functioning perfectly with the existing infrastructure that we've gradually built up over time. And the key to this transitional approach, of course, being these IP-PBX systems. And they probably don't look like anything that you have seen before. They are Asterisk based, and they are modular. As we saw, you can add the modules to increase the number of analog and digital phones that you can support through time. So the system itself is very flexible on a hardware side, but even more so on the software side, because these systems are based on Asterisk, which is open source telephony software developed especially, and it's made just great strides since it was originally introduced almost a decade ago, and we'll talk more about that later. But just to go back and to take a look and make a one-by-one comparison of the IP gateway approach and the transitional approach, we'll take a moment here. So if we look at the IP gateway approach, we see that it solves basically a single issue. It does provide IP connectivity, and that is a great cost savings, but it's a temporary solution. If you go with the transitional approach, it actually solves multiple issues by providing full IP-PBX functionality. The IP gateway is a closed system. It's not flexible. It's not upgradable. So once you've installed it, it will solve your IP connectivity issue at that moment. But as your network develops and your requirements change, there's nothing that you can do with that IP gateway. On the other hand, with the IP-PBX, it's an open system so that it's being continually enhanced by a worldwide network of developers, and as I showed you, the system architecture makes it very flexible. We call the IP gateway a limited solution because when you do get to the stage when you're ready to implement an IP-PBX, the gateway becomes redundant. The IP-PBX, on the other hand, is an evolving solution because you can always get the leading edge telephony whenever you're ready for it. With an IP gateway approach, you may have a discrepancy between the types of product that you have installed in your headquarters and your remote offices, and that's something that might lead to incompatibility issues. But in the transitional approach, you use the same products for both headquarters and remote offices, and that streamlines everything. On the gateway side, it will never replace the PBX. It just does not have the same functionality. So the maintenance fees for the legacy PBX and the utility costs are ongoing. And as you saw with the transitional approach, when you get to stage 3, you are ready to eliminate the PBX, and so you eliminate the headache, the maintenance fees, and the associated utilities costs. Now, I said that I wanted to say a few words about Asterisk. It is open source software, telephony for specifically developed, and it is at the core of all of the products that we manufacture here at Xorcom. So I thought it would be fitting to give you a few facts about Asterisk, and most of my information is based upon a report that was published in January of this year by the Eastern Management Company. I've given a hot link here, and anyone that wants this presentation at the end of the webinar can certainly receive a copy. Basically, the Eastern Management Corporation has been putting together research papers on the telephony industry for the last 30 years, and they decided to make a specific report about open source, and they interviewed about 7,000 industry professionals, people in various industries and people in IT departments, just to get an understanding of exactly what the impact of open source telephony has been on the entire telephony industry. And the results are actually pretty amazing, because Asterisk started out as kind of a fringe solution, and and open source in general has that feeling that, wow, is this really something that we can incorporate in corporations? But I think that based on the results of this report, where they found that a full 18% of telephony installations in 2008 were based on open source platforms. Now, the most popular open source software for telephony with an 85% share is indeed Asterisk. It's continually being developed, enhanced, documented by a worldwide body of developers, and this keeps everything very fresh and up to date. One of the most interesting findings of this report was when they interviewed different people in companies that had decided to implement open source telephony solutions in their companies. They asked them specifically what were the reasons that they decided to choose an open source system as opposed to a conventional telephony system. The first reason foremost was the cost. It turns out that open source PBXs cost typically 40% less than their conventional counterparts. And the other reason is that it's very simple to integrate software applications into the IP-PBX. And this is also a very important trend in the corporate world. The desire to integrate perhaps call center applications or sales management, CRM, and to make those as streamlined as possible, and with open source that is much easier. So I'm not going to go through the specific list here, but there are dozens and dozens of features that are made available by an IP-PBX that you don't get in a standard PBX. And if you don't get them in a standard PBX, then you don't get them in the setup where you have the IP gateway working alongside the legacy PBX. So all of these, from voicemail to music on hold to the follow me, all of these that are so flexible and can be achieved out of the box with an Asterisk-based solution. I'll just make a quick overview here of the Xorcom offering and the IP-PBX product line. We have three different models. The XR1000 is our model that's optimized for small office, home office use. In this one little 19-inch 1U rack mountable or wall mountable unit, you can support up to 50 users and 5 concurrent calls. It does support up to 2 different telephony modules here. They can be any mix of FXO, FXS, and BRI, and it supports remote access as well as built-in echo cancellation. The next unit is the XR2000. It's an IP-PBX for small and medium business. It's in the same 19-inch wide, but it's a 2U unit. And it supports up to 32 telephony ports. And it's the various combinations of FXO, FXS, and the digital PRI and BRI. In addition, you can add units to this of our channel bank for a total of 160 analog ports in a single configuration. Alongside that, it supports up to 300 IP users, and those can be on either SIP or X protocol. It supports up to 60 concurrent calls and 300 users. And it also supports a RAID 1 option, which is a dual hard drive for redundancy. The top of the line is the XR3000, which is our IP-PBX for enterprise. It's housed in the same unit as the XR2000, 19-inch 2U, but it's got a more powerful processor so that it can, with additional units, supply 672 analog ports in a single configuration. It does support up to 1,000 IP users, 1,000 users overall, 300 concurrent calls. It does have the built-in echo cancellation and support for the RAID 1. Another concern of enterprise when installing IP-PBX is high availability. And we've developed a solution, we call it TwinStar, which is basically a way to provide the full redundancy for the complete IP-PBX system, including the telephony interfaces. And the way that we do that is that we set up a primary and a backup server that are identical, and our Asterisk channel bank is at the heart of the system because it has special firmware which does auto detection of a server failure and can switch all the telephony to the backup server in a matter of seconds. So this is a quick and automatic failover process, and that does keep downtime to a minimum. And it's not network dependent. So like I say, the solution is comprised of 2 Asterisk-based IP-PBX units that have identical configurations, and they're both attached via USB port to our Asterisk channel bank, which contains this special firmware for the automatic detection and switching over of the telephony. And we do have a demo of that, but let's get back to our main subject, which is the IP gateway approach as compared to the traditional approach. Again, IP gateway, it solves a single issue, and that's providing the IP connectivity, which is fine, but the transitional approach will give full IP-PBX functionality from step 1. The IP gateway is a closed system, which is somewhat limiting, while with the transitional approach you have an Asterisk-based system, so it's open and continually being enhanced. The IP gateway is limited because once you do choose to go to an IP-PBX, it makes itself completely redundant, while the investment that you made in the first stage of the transitional approach continues to give the benefits as it is an evolving solution. With the gateway approach, it could be that you have different products for headquarters and remote offices, leading to compatibility issues, where with the transitional approach, the same IP-PBX has smooth and secure communication. The IP gateway, again, just a temporary replacement. It cannot, it's not a replacement, a temporary addition to a system. It can never replace the PBX, so that you will always have those legacy maintenance fees and utility costs, whereas you can choose with the transitional approach to replace you can replace the PBX at any time, and then you do no longer need to pay those maintenance fees and the utilities costs. Okay. I just want to let you know that we have these webinars on a monthly basis, and we advertise them on our website. That's www.xorcom.com, and we also have a monthly newsletter wherein we announce them. So I invite you to register for the newsletter, come and visit our site, and stay tuned for the next topic. I also invite you, if you have a topic that you would like to have covered in a webinar that relates to telephony and IP-PBX, we are more than happy to hear from you, and perhaps it's something that we could address in an upcoming webinar. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we will make copies of this presentation available, and I hope you got some information here, and please don't hesitate to contact us in the future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.